Hello everybody, I'm SnipingIsFun, and in today's video, I'm going to bring you yet another top 10 Super Smash Bros. 4 list. This time, I'm going to be counting down the top 10 potential retro newcomer choices I could see in Super Smash Bros. 4, so stay tuned after the intro for my list. I'm going to start off number 10 with a fairly simple choice that tends to get requested quite a bit, and that's the Duck Hunt dog from Duck Hunt on the original Nintendo system. It's the system that came with the game. You use the light gun, you shot the birds, you know, the dog that laughs at you if you do bad, that guy. I'm putting him at number 10 as low as I am because I really don't see the point for a character like this, but I can see why people want to see him in there, and I do see that he is kind of iconic with Nintendo, especially when they finally started releasing home consoles, when they started, they brought, the gaming back in America kind of thing with the NES back in the 80s. You could do fairly interesting attacks when we don't have a dog-like character in the game, and you could also, like I've seen other people do, they've tossed the light gun on him. So you can kind of have the moveset where he runs around. He could probably even use the zapper, the light gun, on on the characters. It could be one of his moves. It could even be his final smash. And I do think he is quite iconic enough to be a retro character choice. But I put him at number 10 because while he is kind of iconic, I do see a lot better choices in him, and I don't really get most of the time why he's asked for, but I do see him as worthwhile enough to put him at number 10 on my list. Number 9 on this top 10 list is going to go to the Urban Champion from the game Urban Champion, which is also on the NES. Now, this was like a game released, I think, fairly early on in the NES's lifetime. It was basically like a brawling type game. It was kind of like an early fighting game where you basically fought a random other urban champion type guy in the streets, and you went through continuous fights. And the reason why I could see him, like, I've seen some fair requests of this guy, but he's also kind of the one that's not requested a whole lot. But the whole point of including him is the fact that he does have a lot of fighting potential. He's a fighter. He's a brawler on the streets. He could kick you. He could punch you. He could do all these, he could do a lot of street fighting. Not the game Street Fighter, but, street fighting in the streets, like brawling. And you can kind of make a moveset off of him. And he also would represent another retro character that represents the NES, like Pit did and like the Ice Climbers did. And it was fairly early on in the NES's life. And I think there's potential for a character like him. But another thing is, I think he might be a little too similar to like a Lil Mac, except for the ability to kick. So I think maybe since they do have Lil Mac already in the game as a miscellaneous, and since he's already a brawling type character, I think the idea of the Urban Champion is a little much. So that's the reason why he's lower on the list. But I still could see him as a potential shot because unlike Lil Mac, he could also kick, and you could do maybe some interesting brawling type styles with this character. Number 7 on this list is going to go to Lip from the Panel de Pon series. The series that eventually became like Puzzle League and whatnot with Pokemon, like the puzzle series. I see her quite requested quite a bit, and I do see how she could be unique and be different, being from the puzzle series and all. She's a fairy. You can use like fairy abilities, magic abilities. You can even give her the puzzle league ability. She can like something like puzzle blocks and like smack her opponents around, drop puzzle blocks probably on her opponents and everything. You can kind of integrate what she actually is in like terms of her being a fairy and knowing magic, and then integrating like the puzzle-based techniques from the series as part of her moveset. So she'd be also like a Japanese exclusive retro choice, and I do see her requested quite a bit because of her difference, just how different she can be, and the fact that she is from a semi-important series. Like, you know, Puzzle League did continue on, the puzzle series did continue on. It had like Tetris Attack here in America, which was like with Yoshi, became like the Pokemon Puzzle League series, and so on and so forth. And I think she's generally popular enough to get it. I just don't. I put her lower because I don't see her as a very likely chance, but I do see I do see Lip as a pretty top choice, you know, for a newcomer. But I don't see her as in the top 5 or a very, very big choice. But I can see them potentially choosing her. Number 7 on this list is going to go to a Game Boy original old school character in Prince Sable from the game For the Frog, the Bell Tolls. It was a Japanese exclusive Game Boy game back, you know, the original Game Boy. Like it was an RPG, and Prince Sable was like, you know, obviously the name suggests that he was a prince, and he does use a sword, but he would have some original abilities, be able to turn into both a snake and a frog, which would actually give him some uniqueness in terms of a sword user. Like, he won't really rely only on his sword. He would be able to transform into a snake and transform into a frog and be able to use those as part of his moveset, and unique abilities can go with that. And I'm sure he knows other magical abilities too, because obviously I've never played the game, but I have looked up about the game. But it is an RPG, so I'm assuming he knows other magical abilities, so he can integrate the snake and frog transformations on top of other magic into his moveset on top of the sword. You don't have to rely too much on the sword. You can make the sword even an afterthought and focus on the transformations and magical abilities. And it would be different, I think, to include him, because we don't have a retro character that's from a handheld yet. Besides, you know, Mr. Game & Watch, but, you know, from like a Game Boy handheld, you know, Game Boy Color type of thing. We have the Game & Watch series with Mr. Game & Watch, but we don't necessarily have necessarily a Game Boy character. And I think Prince Sable would be able to fit into that niche of retro, and moveset-wise, he would definitely be unique. And popularity-wise, I do see him get requested quite a bit, not as much as other retro choices, which is the reason why he's not super high on this list, but he's generally has enough popularity that people who do, if he does get announced for the game, I think there will be people that do know who he is, or at least have heard of him, and if not, they would certainly look him up. And who knows, if this game, if he actually gets put in Smash Bros., we could always see maybe a return for the series, or a remake, or maybe the game being localized so, you know, other audiences can play it. But like I said, I see him potentially being a choice because of his moveset and general popularity, and that's really about it. Number 6 on this list is going to go to the Excitebiker from Excitebike on the NES. Yes, I call them Excitebiker. There's other people that call him Excitebiker too, since we're just talking generally about one of the Excitebike racers. But you say, oh, he's mainly riding his motorcycle. Well, yeah, and that would actually make him really unique. He's a character that you're mainly going to maneuver around the stage on his bike. You'll run into opponents, you'll attack opponents with your motorcycle, and he could probably get knocked off his bike, but that could be like his weak. Let's say this, he could fight off his bike, he can get off his bike or get knocked off his bike, and he can still fight, but you kind of make it where he's like fights better on his bike. Like, if you haven't remember from the original Excitebike on the NES, when you get knocked off the bike, the Excitebiker runs so slow to get back up to his motorcycle. You can make it like that where he maneuvers so fast on his motorcycle, but when he gets knocked off, he's so flippin' slow. and he's not really that useful, but you can still use him, and people and players can find a way to master that ability. So he has two unique styles: slow off the bike and fast on the bike. So people can find where they work best at, because it's not like we're going to make them suck at off the bike, but you're going to actually, you're going to make them just a little bit weaker off the bike. And also, Excitebike's generally a popular series. It was on the NES. It had an N64 like 3D version on the N64, and it did get World Rally as a WiiWare game on the Virtual Console. On the Wii, and really, I think he'd be unique enough, and it's from a generally popular series that has had multiple installments, to the point where I think the Excitebiker would be a good retro choice. Number 5 on this top 10 retro newcomer choices for Super Smash Bros. 4 is going to go to a tied choice. And if you've seen my top 10 list before, when it comes to Smash Brothers newcomers and stuff like that, like the top 10 Nintendo characters, don't want to see top 5 third parties. I've done this before. It's a tied position for two characters from the pro wrestling game on the NES, Starman and Fighter Hayabusa. This was also earlier on in the NES's lifetime, like its lifespan. These two characters are wrestlers, so they would offer something unique. Like Starman would be more lucha libre, high flying kicks and everything, since he's from Mexico, and then Fighter Hayabusa would be like the Japanese strong style because he's from Japan, and they'd be able to use their unique finishing moves and special power moves from the game to really do some unique stuff in terms of moveset. On top of the fact that they're wrestlers, they're going to be doing DDTs and like German suplexes and pile drivers. You could add more wrestling moves. They might not have done these moves in the game, but you could add to them. And you can go either way with Fighter Hayabusa. You can go with Starman. You can even do a tag team character, which would be fairly simple, fairly interesting. Like you do down B, you tag out, and you can play with Starman in Fighter Hayabusa. Whatever they want to do, I think this type of character would be at least the most unique in terms of moveset potential. In terms of popularity, I don't really see many of these characters requested as much, and if I do see either of them requested more than the other, I do see Starman requested somewhat. I don't really see Fighter Hayabusa all that much requested, but they're like the two top characters from the game, two more popular characters from the game, so I can see why I choose those two over the rest of the cast of the game. And in terms of, they would fit in with Pit or Ice Climbers as NES retros. So when it comes to them, I see them as a higher chance than some, but not super high. I would say that much. Number 4 on this list is going to go to Mike Jones. Oh, I had to say that. I'm sorry. I had this. Oh gosh, I can't believe I said that. But it's going to go to Mike Jones from Star Tropics series, which was also NES. Star Tropics and Star Tropics 2: Zelda's Revenge. Our action RPG-esque series. He would bring up his yo-yo and bat and various other little gadgets and stuff he picks up during the game, which sounds a little similar to NES, but he has some uniqueness to him. The fact that he doesn't have no psi powers or anything like NES does, so you focus solely on melee attacks and solely on ranged attacks that don't have to do with any sort of magic or anything. And I do think he's one of the retro characters I do see the most requested for. And he would also be unique enough to the fact that he's basically a American retro choice, a non-Japanese in general, let's say, not just American, but non-Japanese retro character. So he'd be unique in the fact that they never really have went for something like that, where a character that did not originate from Japan. And I do see him requested quite a bit. He does have some unique popularity, both his series for people who want to return to Star Tropics and for the character themselves. I could potentially see him being one of the next newcomers for, a retro choice in Smash Brothers. We're in the top 3 right now, and my next choice is going to go all the way over to the arcade days of Nintendo with Sheriff from the 1979 game by the same name. Now, I see him as being one of the most classic old school choices for, Nintendo, for retro choices. And I've said this before because I think I put him on my top 10 Nintendo characters list or something like that. I think I did. I have talked about him before. And he's a sheriff, so essentially he's a cowboy. He uses the lasso in his game. He has a gun. You could basically have him ride a horse, and you could make it you could give him little old Western styled stuff to represent his moveset. Dynamite, TNT, and sheriffs / cowboys usually know how to fist fight, so you can allow him to at least be able to brawl a little bit. So I think his moveset potential is certainly there. And then he would be, like I said about Prince Sable being a unique, different type of retro because he's Game Boy, this would be unique for Sheriff because he's arcade, and we have yet to see an exclusive arcade. I'm not talking about no Donkey Kong or Mario Brothers or anything like that. Characters that were both in console and arcade. He's pretty much been exclusively arcade, and I see him as being one of the most old school characters for Nintendo, and historical because it's 1979 arcade. He's been before Donkey Kong. He's been before Mario. Jumpman. I just think he makes some sense, and then there's moveset potential, and you don't see him requested a whole lot, but I think I see him requested here and there. So in terms of popularity, it depends, but in terms of moveset and historical purpose, that's why I choose him to potentially be a retro character in Super Smash Bros. 4. Number 2 on this list, we're going all the way back to the NES with the Mach Rider. Now this character I do see requested quite a bit. And like I said about Excitebiker, like how Excitebiker could ride the bike when he fights, Mach Rider could do the same thing. The only difference here is Mach Rider's, motorcycle has like guns on it, has like weapons and gadgets you could use when you ride around. You could use those to attack other players, other characters, and even then you can get off the motorcycle, and unlike the Excitebiker, who I said would be super slow, this guy, he's more combat oriented, so you could go up and do your fist fighting and your kicking and all that stuff. So he'd have like a double moveset on motorcycle and off motorcycles, and you can kind of mix with some uniqueness there. On top of the fact, he's another NES rep from very early on in NES's life, and he's often requested for, so I do see him as a very good potential chance, not a guarantee, but a good potential chance for a retro character in Super Smash Bros. 4. Number 1 on my top 10 retro characters list that I could see as newcomers in Super Smash Bros. 4 is going to go to Takamaru from the Japanese game. Murasame Castle. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact Japanese name right now, but from Murasame Castle, which is like kind of like the translation to it. Takamaru is, out of all the retro characters I see requested, he's pretty much the number 1 most requested choice. And outside of being requested, they're kind of bringing back the character too. He's cameoed in Captain Rainbow on the Wii, Samurai Warriors 3 on the Wii. He got an attraction, a game in Nintendo Land, so I do see Nintendo trying to bring him back. And what's one of the biggest ways to bring back a character? Smash Brothers. That's how Pit was brought back, and look what happened there. We got Kid Icarus Uprising on the 3DS back in 2012. So there's some leeway to actually bringing someone back, and they're bringing characters back. They're bringing them back as little cameos here and there, but Smash Brothers would be the big way to put them right in the spotlight and bring him back if they truly do want to bring him back and make like a remake or a sequel or something, and finally maybe even localize his game out there and localize a sequel. So, and also his moveset, he's a samurai. It's another sword user, but it's a different type of sword user. I've never really had a samurai fighting style yet. On top of the fact, he wouldn't be strictly a sword user. He'd have this little throwing stars and other little ninja / samurai gadgets and stuff. And all the little spells and stuff he does on the scrolls and whatnot that you get in the game. So he wouldn't be strictly a sword user, but he would be able to use other abilities too. And his sword style ability would actually be pretty unique because it's a samurai based one. And that's my top 10 retro newcomer ideas, character ideas I could see potentially being put in Super Smash Bros. 4. My choices for Super Smash Bros. 4. Number 10 was the Duck Hunt Dog. Number 9 was the Urban Champion. 8 was Lip. 7 was Prince Sable. 6 was the Excitebiker. 5 was a tie between Fighter Hayabusa and Starman. 4 was Mike Jones. 3 was the Sheriff. 2 was Mach Rider, and number 1 was Takamaru. I hope you guys like this video. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to, and stay tuned for my next Super Smash Bros. 4 video.